Welcome back to another episode here on the Mindful Chiropractor. Excited to have you guys on here. As always, before we get into today's topic, we have a free Facebook group that you can check out, the Prosperous Chiropractor. It's in the show notes. I also have a LinkedIn group. If you're on LinkedIn and that's where you play, you can check that out there. Also, last but not least, I am coming out with two things. One, we got a lot happening here. One is going to be, we're going to be sharing a monthly workshop. Each month, I'm going to share a topic of something that I'm going to go over. This first one's going to be all about numbers and business and so forth. We're going to talk a little about that today. And then the second thing is, with that, I'm going to be coming out with a new 90-day Chiros Success Accelerator program. This is something that I've been teaching for 5 years that I've been doing, and I'm blending it. I used to do 6 months. Now I'm doing it in 3 months in a way to help you elevate. So if you're looking to really soar, to really prep, to get ready, to really get everything in order, so in 2024 you can really expand, this is the time to do it. So there is a waiting list. All you have to do is click on the link in the show notes, go ahead and put in your name and email on the landing page there, and it'll go ahead and put you on the waiting list. We're going to be starting to share this in a couple weeks, and there's only going to be a 3-day window to register, so make sure you do that. So today's topic, this is something that actually has been in a lot of conversations that I've been having, either with clients, prospect clients, or even just with chiropractors around the area. And it's one of those things that we don't really, how do I put this? This is why I do a lot of vision work, because vision is going to be the big thing to help you align to why these numbers matter. There's certain numbers in your business to know where you're at and what you need to work on. And then we need to make sure that you're evaluating those at a very continual process. Maybe monthly is usually a good standpoint where I like to go. So that way, you know where you need to tweak, where you need to put your energy. What are you doing good at? What energy is flowing well and what energy isn't? Because the numbers are just energy at the end of the day. It's where your focus is what you're putting your energy towards, and those kind of things. So with my clients that I work with, we put them through a new patient, 8 ways how to gain new patients. And we have 3 ways to increase their conversions above 80%. And we also have 8 different ways to increase retention. Now, the reason why I created those things was because, one, you need to have new patients if you want to grow, right? If you want to excel and get more higher levels, you're going to need new patients in some way, shape, or form. It could be your activations. It got to be something, but these are people that are coming into your office. We have to convert them, right? Because then they actually become practice members. They're actually part of your practice. And then there's the retention side, which is longevity. A lot of times chiropractors are hooked on so much of new patients. I've been in this profession for almost 14 years now. And it fascinates me that the message 14 years ago is still the same message today. It's still the same selling point out of everything else. New patients, new patients, new patients, new patients. That's all I constantly keep hearing about. That's all I constantly keep seeing. It's all about new patients. And like I said, that helps, but it doesn't solve a problem. So let's say you're getting a lot of new patients, but your practice isn't growing as well. There's another issue there. So all you're doing is you're filling a void, but you have this bucket, right? And there's these holes. These are patients that are leaving. And the thing is, you have a lot of holes and you're just thinking, well, if I just keep putting more water into it, that eventually I can maintain the bucket to be at a certain level. And that's the whole business advice of grind and hustle and all those things. That just doesn't work. Instead, why don't we just plug up some of the holes? Why don't we solve why the holes existed in the first place? Then you need less new patients. Now you don't have to work as hard to get new patients. Now you can go from, then you have to start getting 40 new patients a month. It's amazing how many times I talk to chiropractors and they see 40, 60, 80 new patients a month. And yet their numbers are roughly around the same where it should be. That's a big back door. So we want to know there's numbers and stats that we can utilize. And you probably heard some of these things. This is not rocket science. This isn't new, fascinating things. I do have some equations that I put together for my clients, but it's not really new stuff, but it's just understanding them a little deeper, right? So new patients. Well, let's get to the first stat. To me, one of the biggest stats you need to know is your conversions, because it doesn't matter how many new patients you get. If you got 20% conversion rate, that means 8 out of 10 patients don't sign up with you. That's a lot of work to build that practice. So what's the conversions? One of the things I do, and nowadays you have great, depending on your EHR, they're getting so much more sophisticated now with cloud-based systems and all the little things that are coming up with them. I'm a little old school. I like an Excel sheet. And so what I would do, patient first name, initial the last name. And then what we do is we make sheets out of each month. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put, we'll calculate in there the patient's name, when they were a new, date, and then we just put new patient and we put a 1 and then converted. Okay. And now the reason why I do that is I would calculate my numbers out of that. So at the end, the total on the end of that sheet would automatically calculate what my conversion rates were. How cool is that, right? Simple and easy. But what I also do is I would have a first sheet that would be calculating that bottom line into all my January, February, March, April throughout the whole year. So then I know what was I break it down into quarters and I break it down into the total year. So that way I know exactly my numbers on my conversion rate. So I'm always keeping on top and looking and knowing my numbers when it comes to conversions. So that way, if I'm messing up any way, shape, or form, I'm missing something in day one, not day two, day one. A lot of times, Carol thinks day two is the selling point, and you got to show them what it is. And day one is where you build the rapport. And day one is where they're going to know if you truly care or not. So it's that day one of connecting, finding values, and be able to convert. Now, we have podcasts on this. You can go look at the first, I think, 10. There's a couple in there about this. But it's one of those things where we need to connect with them first, and then we can look at our conversions to know how are we doing in each month. And that's going to determine how successful we are from taking a new patient into that. Because if you have an 80% success rate or conversion rate, now every 8 out of 10 patients are signing up with you. That's a lot easier than someone with a 20% conversion rate. And that means that you have to work 4 times harder to compete with someone who has an 80% conversion rate at 10 patients a month coming in. Does that make sense? So simple stuff, right? Nothing too hard there. But this is how we evaluate to know how we're doing there. The second thing that I'm a big on is going to be then looking at when it comes to retention. Okay. We'll get into all these other numbers because retention is going to play a role with another number and all this stuff. But retention, you got to know there's 3 levels, I think, when it comes to retention. And it depends on your practice. So this is where specific advice happens for those in different arenas of what they do. If you're like a CVP doc or how, you sell, 70, 80, 90 visits is what your recommendations are going to be in a year, then there should be different price point or different measurements to understand retention. If you're an upper cervical doc, you're not going to see them as much, or tonal base, something like that. Some tonal people don't see their patients once a month or once every 3 months. So where is that retention? How do you define that? In my office, what I did is we had 3 levels. We had an acute phase, we had a recovery phase, and we had a wellness phase. Acute phase was when we're seeing them 3 times a week, right? So what's the retention? How many people go through 3 times a week? And we had a percentage. And then the second phase was recovery. And so what that means is recovery. And the reason why we call them that, so restore was the first one, recovery was the second. And recovery was recovering their body back to their normal way, whatever was optimal for them. And so we had a retention number for that. And then the third one was wellness. How many of our patients from start to finish get to wellness? Now, we wanted to know this. Again, remember how I said I had that first sheet that I said patient's first name, this and then that. Now, there are softwares that can do these kind of things. You have to do a little bit of work with some of them. But all I wanted to know was, and some of them already have these programs built in now, which is nice. But what I would do is on that sheet where I had the new patient, did they convert and all that, then we would just track. So what I would do is every month, my team will go back and look at new patients, go through the last 3 months and go and track those 3 months ago, where they're at, because they kind of know if they're 3 times a week going into 2, so that they make it to twice a week. If they're at twice a week, then boom, retention's still solid there. And we don't put a 1 on there, we put a 1. And so when they stop, we leave it as a 0. So then we know that they stopped. And then what we'll do is we calculate those numbers for that person. And we'll know what that retention is based on patients coming in. So every month we're checking this 3 months behind. So we're seeing where people are so we can kind of gauge it. So we would have that for our acute, we'll have it for recovery, and then we have it for wellness. And so then that way we'll know. And then we'll also do wellness each year. So sometimes people say these are a little too much. Why do you need all these numbers? For us, I needed it. I wanted to know. Because a lot of times, here's the thing. Chiropractors are looking to say, what's the patient visit average? And you can use that if you want. So for those who don't know, patient visit average means is when someone signs up with care with you, however you accept them in your office, however you do your financial plans, if you do them or don't, what ends up happening is that's the amount of visits on average a patient's going to stick with you. Now, that some people may say, well, that's just easier. I'd rather just do that. That's great, but all that tells you is visits. It doesn't give you specifics. So you may have, let's say, you get 2 patients that are with you for 100 visits, but then you get 5 or 6 patients that are only there for 10, 20. You add that up, it's like 40 or 50. And you're like, that's my average, but that's not specific to the percentage of retention and all these things. I like specific details so I can gauge where my practice is. Where's the longevity being created? Do I use PVA? I do, because it gave me a ballpark average. We saw around 50 to 55, and I think that's not bad when it comes to an insurance base. We were 30, 40% insurance practice, and the rest was cash. And so it's one of those things where before I was insurance, I was cash before, and we had 120 and 130 PVA. So it was crazy how higher that was. And it's common because if you're cash, you're going to usually should have a higher PVA because people are putting their money into things, which that means they're putting value into something. They're going to stick and be successful with it. So we talked about how to figure out your conversions. We talked about how to figure out retention, and then based on your practice on what you do to figure out where our patients are in each stage. So if you have phases of care, you should definitely be following up on retention to know exactly the percentages of where they are. And it's easy for your team to track it or yourself. I mean, it's an Excel sheet and you can just go ahead and put that up. But like I said, some softwares you can go in and look new patients and how long are they sticking to care. Some of them do have those metrics built in, but it's nice. I like Excel. It's nice. I have charts that are kind of tied into that. That way I know exactly what I'm looking at, my trends and so forth. And that's the basics when it comes to understanding your practice from a health perspective, from a patient perspective. Now, one of the other things, and there's two numbers that you really want to start to focus on and really know and dial in. That's cost per visit average or dollar visit average, right? DVA or cost per visit average, whatever that's going to be ever. CVA, DVA, and then cost case average. So what that means is what's the amount of money someone's paying when they come into your office for care. Now, these are going to help you from a financial standpoint to figure out now longevity, okay? A lot of times I see chiropractors, most of them, not always, but a lot of them, in my experience, work too much, don't make enough, and they're burning themselves out. Because I've had clients say this when I'm saying you got to bump up your prices. Oh, I think my numbers are good. Your care plans are based on, if I have a client who uses the same examination process like I used to, and then I see what their care plan recommendations are, they need to change it because they're too less. And they're like, well, I feel really confident people aren't going to commit. And the thing is, chiropractors make excuses for people without even knowing. It's like this. I want my vision and goal for clients when I work with them, and this is what happened to me in my practice. I stopped just accepting of what is, and I started declaring and stating this is what it's going to be. Now, the reason why I became that way, and you can call it my way or the highway, I've been called that before. That's not the way how I'm looking at it. It's a disservice to me, to put the patients, if I'm not giving them what they need or recommending what they need and telling them you need to buy to this, or else you can go to someone else who's more lenient and they won't care if you come or go when you please. I want to see you get the results because I know this is what works. And so that being said, I did shift that way and it was awesome. My reviews went up like crazy. Not that I wasn't getting results before. I was. It was more a neurological thing that I wasn't seeing. I see patterns come back, subluxation patterns come back, and it annoyed the heck out of me. And it's one of those things that when we look at, understanding what works for you, right? So you got to figure out that we're working too hard and we're doing too much. Our cost per visit average is how much does someone pay you? Now, it could be insurance with that coming in and so forth, but what is that dollar amount that averages out? And you want to know, because there's so many chiropractors I see even chiropractors see 400, 500, 600 a week and they bloat about it. They're talking about how big their practice is, or they saw 1,000 a week. But yet, when you look at 1,000 a week, they're doing $30 a visit cost per average. Now, all of a sudden, you may say, hey, doc, they're making 120,000 or 1.44 million per year on average, right? Who doesn't want to practice like that? Yeah, but here's the thing. Is it efficient? Sometimes chiropractors, we want to see these high volume numbers. I did at one point. I wanted to get to 400 or 500. That was my goal, 500 visits a week. I already had the numbers in my head of what that was going to be. And I was like, man, that'd be so amazing if I get to 500 a week. Holy cow. And then I got real with myself. And I said, do I really want to be doing that? Not that I can't, but I think there's a way of how I want to do something, because you can price yourself to be too low or you price yourself to be too high. But you never want to be in the middle where all the other chiropractors are, because you have to think how patients think. So what's your cost per average? Now, how do you figure that out? It's very simple. You look at what you made per month and you divide that by the visits you saw per month, not new patients, adjustments. Okay. Adjustments per month, because that's how much, well, technically you could do new patients. I like to separate that. So we would know how many, because our EHR can figure that out. How many new patients do we have this month? Okay. What was that looking like? Okay. What was my total sales? All right. Let me subtract the new patient sales with that. So that way I would know exactly how much specifically someone's paying me for an adjustment. And when I first did this, I was shocked. it was like $32 a visit. And I did insurance. And I was like, what the heck? No wonder. And all of a sudden, I got real strict and specific. I started looking at things of what I wanted to add in my practice to help from a structure base and all these other things. I looked at everything. And then we started averaging about $80 to $85 a visit. And I was like, all right, this is a lot easier. That's how I can go see. I averaged, I think, 153 or 160. It was 153, I think we averaged in 1 year. This is one of the years we were blowing up, financially speaking. And it was one of those things that we ended up, we almost had a 7-figure practice. It worked out, in a way to where now it was 153. That was the year before. That was like yeah. So anyhow, but it was, again, getting it up there. My goal is to get to $100 a visit if I could. Now I'm in insurance. It's a little easier, right? But then we started to change our practice around in 2016, 2017. And then we went down to 50, 40. It was like $48, $49 a visit. And that was our average. And 50, it was 50. But anyhow, either way, $50. So it was roughly around there. And it fluctuated from month to month. Sometimes we'll be at 60, 70. Sometimes we'll be at 45, 50. But we averaged around $50 or 50 something dollars a month. That was the last few years, like 3 to 4 years. And but it was one of those things where for us that was good. That's what we liked. I mean, you come in for cash. Our first visits are $50. Our wellness was, if you 2 people or more, was $30 a visit. This is all before COVID and stuff. And because we would have raised our prices on that. But that's what we did, right? So it works. So if you're saying we have a wellness plan, and I had over 125 patients under wellness. And so if you think about that, and they're paying, if it's 2 people or more, it's only $240 a month, $30 a visit. And yet I'm still averaging 50 something dollars a visit. So I have a good other end of that. That helps bring that up drastically. And so, but knowing your numbers, are you okay with that? And if not, you have to really be clear of where your numbers are at and where you want to be. You have to focus on then, how do I raise my prices so that I can get to where I want to be? How many patient visits do you want to max out at? And does the maxing out of patients hit the numbers of what you want to achieve? Because here's the other interesting thing about working with clients, potential clients and so forth. They'll tell me a number of what they want to make and where they want to get to. And I'll go ahead and look at their numbers. And we'll break it down and say, it's impossible. You can't do that. You have to work 50, 60 hours a week to hit that number. And they'll think I'm crazy. And then I show them the numbers. And then they go, holy cow, I never thought of it. And I said, no wonder you never got to where you were going to. There was a roadblock already there that's showing you weren't going to get there. So how about we do one or two things? You either bring that number down or change your pricing to bring it back up. And so it's one of those things where I had one office I was working with, and they saw about 200 some a week. And so their dollar cost per visit was like $35. And so I was like, that's too low. No wonder we're seeing struggles here and there. I mean, you're making, they had very low overhead, so they were doing decently well for, how much they were making. But I literally told them, we're going to change your prices and flip it. We jumped it up $20 a visit. Okay. They were kind of nervous about that. So it was about 70%, 75% of an increase. And we explained why and all these other things. And so all of a sudden, their numbers dipped. And we were expecting that. And their numbers dipped about 30 something odd percent. And so they're a little bothered because their numbers were lower, visit wise. Financially, they were higher. And they're like, how? And I said, you remember, we increased your prices by 70+%. You only went down 30%. So you're going to see a 40% growth in your practice. And they did see 40%. They ended up over doubling their practice. And what happened is they understood more confidence in themselves, because you have to have confidence to understand what you do. You have to see how powerful the adjustment is and what it matters for the individual and what you're doing in that process. And you have to show half phases and experiences in a way to do that. And when you can show them in different ways of how they're changing and not just how they feel, and you can get them to see that, that adds more value to what you do. Chiropractic is the one, it's when we look at health, it's like, it's the one thing that I always tell people you should do that before anything else. And I mean that because I do that. And I tell patients to do that all the time. So what's your cost per dollar visit? Remember, same as Zipple. Find out how many adjustments you did in that month, divide that by the total sales, subtracting, new patients. Now, if you want to go, hey, you know what, I'm just going to do it off everything, then go ahead. That's fine. It doesn't, whatever's easier for you. I'm, again, very detailed. And I have systems in place to make it very easy to figure that out. It's so easy to pick out and say, oh, those are all new patients. That's what the charges were. Here's what it is. Let's subtract it from sales. Done. Boom. Here we go. And it's all on an Excel sheet for me. The third thing is your case. Now, how much do people pay in a plan? Are they 3 months, 6 months if you do financial plans? Sometimes chiropractors are like, I don't want to do any financial plans. And I don't understand that, because in today's world, we're kind of used to it. I'm not saying you have to do these long out 12-month plans. I did them. I did 12-month plans. It was an option. Heck, I even did I've done a 24-month plan. Yeah, go figure that one out. And the reason why we did those is if a family can't afford monthly, then at a year, 6 months or a year, then we'll say, hey, you know what, we can extend out, but we would have a very tight financial agreement. And it always worked out for the most part. It always did. I think we only had one time, and we didn't do it often. My wife would do all this. And I think it was like 18 months was the push she would go to if they needed it. And then if anything, we would blend into 24 months for a few families of 5 and 6 and whatnot. And we've only had it backfire, I think, one or two times in 7 years of doing. So I don't think it's that bad. I mean, it's a headache, but it's not that bad. But what's the case that you're getting? So for us, a 3-month plan is for a kid was about 23 to 2,400 bucks. Okay. For an adult, it's roughly about the same, give or take. Now it depends on what's going on in their life and all these other things. But when we looked at our average for 3 months, it was around $2,200 to $2,300. When we looked at 6 months going on, it was around three, give or take, 20. It was like three something. And so like our total plan of a year was like 39, 42 or something like that, roughly. So I knew what my cases were based on 3, 6, and 12. And so that's kind of what I did my numbers on. And so again, how did I track this? Same thing. On the new patient sheet every month, they would also have what care plan did they agree to. They get a 1 for 3, a 1 for 6, or a 1 for 12. And then we would add those up in total. And so all the new patients that converted only, that's the only time they were allowed to do that because it wouldn't show up on there anyhow. Then we look and see out of all the patients who's signing up, who's going to what. And then from that, I was able to create an average overall. And then I would also know what's the percentage of my patients choosing. And you know, it was fascinating. As much as some chiropractors don't like when people do a 12-month plan, I would say about 60-something% of my patients would choose the 12-month plan. Now you may say, why? Well, one, it's more cost effective monthly. And we're not charging interest, so why not? You make it more effective. I mean, I lose in the beginning, but I gain in the end. At the end, it balances out. So why not? Now, if they had insurance, we had to do things differently. But if it was cash, we can work it out in some way. And so what ended up happening is knowing what your cases are. You got to know what that case volume is, what that's going to be per patient. And so we average them out. We would look and see, you know, out of all of them that were totaled, what was the average then? So we take all 3 different ones, right? Because let's say a bunch of them are doing 3 months, certain percentages are doing 2, and I said 67% was doing 12. So you figure out of that, then it was like 30-something% was the 3-month, and then there was like only 10, 15. Don't ask me why 6 months was only that low. I have no idea. And so then we would average those out by take 30%, multiply it by what the volume was there. Take 15%, multiply what that case was, and then take 60%, multiply by that. And then we would get the average real patient case average. So why is this all important? Right? You might say, man, doc, this is just way too much. Here's the reason why this is important, though. In my head, I can calculate new patient signs up for care. Boom, I know it's $3,000 right there, or $2,800 or whatever that's going to be. I know already based on my stats in my office. You know your numbers, you know your growth. Now, when it comes to looking at then overall, right, we got to get into business stuff. When we look at overall, then, if you say, man, I'm not getting new patients, I don't know what's happening here, there are other metrics that we need to use. And for this podcast, I think this is good enough. I can get in deeper into this. And like I said, I'm going to have a workshop. My first workshop is going to go a lot more deeper into like ROI investing and how do you calculate to know what that is and understand how your marketing efforts are. What are you putting money in? How much are you going to return on the investment? How much are you investing in yourself? How much are return on there? Because that's going to be critical from the marketing side. But from an overall, you can look at your practice and you say, man, I'm not hitting the numbers. My numbers are going down. I don't know why. Guess what? Go look at retention. Go look at your conversions. How many new patients are coming in? And right there, that's going to tell you a lot of information right there. If you say, man, financially, I'm not hitting the mark, but man, I have a client who basically doubled his volume in 6, 7 months. It's like 6, it's almost 5. But anyhow, double his volume, patient volume. But there was hiccups in some insurance. If you had insurance, you know how that goes. And what ends up happening is his cost per visit went down by 30%. And so he's making less than what he was 3 months ago. And I said, well, once we correct your cost per visit, we get that all situated, you're actually going to be making about 40, almost 42% more money per month when you correct it. And again, it's because of cost per visits issues and so forth. So you want to know where that is, because sometimes if you do insurance and you're like, man, I'm not making the money this month, I know this would stress me out. I annoy the heck out of me, where all of a sudden I know my numbers are growing. I know where we're at. Again, I know the numbers. End of the month, I look and see where we're at number wise. I calculate everything. This is what I should be making. I go look at the bank accounts, not there. And I go, what the heck's happening? And then I talk to my billing person. Oh, person my deductibles, or this happened here, or this happened there. And it's just like, let's get that corrected. And eventually it'll correct itself out. But it's one of those things where, again, you know where to gauge. And sometimes you may go, I thought at this level, right? How many times do we think this? I've done this. At this level, I'd rather be here and then I'll make more money. And then all of a sudden you get there and you're like, I'm not making more money. And what's going on here? And then we realize that our cost per visit, what we're charging patients, is too low. Because I truly believe that chiropractic is a necessity for everybody. Now, everyone has a different philosophy. Some people like, my philosophy is work smarter, not harder. I can only serve so many people. And I can hire so many docs to only serve so many people. So instead, my whole vision is I'll serve who I'm going to serve. You're going to pay for my time, because that's what people are paying for, my time and expertise. And from there, it opens the door that people who want to come and work on that model. Great. There are some people who may say, hey, I don't know, my health is not that important. I'd rather just pay very minimal for this. And that's what I just value. And that's okay. There's other chiropractors for that. So you have to define where you are. And that's where vision comes in, a lot of that stuff. But this is kind of some of the basics here. This is not everything I teach, but these are the basics when we get into things. When it comes to numbers, that comes in the things that you need to do to really evaluate your practice, know the health of your practice from a financial and number of patients standpoint, and to know how to really grow and expand. The biggest thing I see is the biggest mistake when I talk to chiropractors is the cost per visit average. It's always lower than what they ever expected. It's always lower, because even when a doc says, I want to get to 400 visits a week, I always say, why? What's this, that? And then I'm like, okay, so when we look at the numbers, $300 a visit, $300, that'd be beautiful, is it? $30 a visit. At that price, it's only $12,000. It's $48,000 a month. You $50,000, that's $600,000 a year. Now, for some chiropractors, they'll be like, oh my God, I will do that. I don't care. Yeah, but 400 visits a week, let's say you're doing diversified manual, right? Adjusting. That's a lot of stress on the body. How many chiropractors I know, I used to be part of a group where the average was 500 a week. And a lot of those docs in those high volume manually adjusting practices, and you look at it and they will say, one regret I have is seeing such high volume because now I'm paying for it. And I'm not trying to, throw fear out there, because there's things that you can do to take care of your body and whatnot too. But you have to understand, the most damaging stress to the body is the most repetitive stress. It's the ones that we're so used to and so accustomed to that we just don't realize. So this is some of it. Again, sign up for the wait list for the program. I am doing monthly workshops. Take a look out in the link there below to sign up now, to go ahead and get email. Just all you have to do is put your name and email. And what it'll do is just get you access to be on the waiting list for the workshop, so that when I go ahead and start marketing this out, you don't have to worry about anything. It's already set and done for you. So take advantage of these things. Join the free Facebook group and so forth. And if you are looking to level up and you really want to change and radically change, take a look at what we got going on for the Chiros Success Accelerator program. 90-day program. It's going to totally transform your mind, your vibe, and really get into these business principles and so much more, to dive deeper into those elements to understand business. But we have to first correct the mind. We have to get the vibe right. You do that, business soars. Usually, I wouldn't say automatically. There's action that needs to be taken, but it's more aligned. And as we know, as chiropractors, better alignment, better health, better vitality, and better vitality and force, energy, flow, all that good stuff. Better health, and so much more. I want to appreciate you guys as always. My name is Dr. Vic. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys in a couple weeks.